Good evening. I'm Nigel Redden, General Director of Spoleto Festival USA, and I want to welcome you to the discussion series exploring Omar. Omar Ibn Said was an African scholar, a Muslim, who was taken prisoner at the age of 37 in what is now Senegal, transported to Charleston, and sold in 1807. He wrote his autobiography in Arabic in 1831, perhaps the only enslaved person to write an autobiography while still enslaved. This autobiography inspired us at Spoleto Festival USA to commission Rhiannon Giddens and Michael Abels to compose an opera entitled Omar, with a libretto by Rhiannon. We had hoped to hold the world premiere of the opera at the opening of the 2021 festival in May of this year, but COVID-19 protocols would not allow us to mount a production that would have had over 100 artists, musicians, and crew on stage and in the pit. Omar will receive its premiere at the festival in 2022. Justice for Omar is the theme of this evening's discussion. Omar had fled the plantation of the man who had bought him in 1807 and managed to walk as far as Fayetteville, North Carolina, where he was jailed, an experience all too familiar for African Americans in this period of mass incarceration. Tonight's discussion will be moderated by Dr. Tamara Butler, the Distinguished Director of the Avery Research Center at the College of Charleston. She will introduce the panel made up of some really remarkable artists. Tamara, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'd like to introduce my three panelists that will be joining us this evening. We're going to do it in alphabetical order. We have Marcus Amaker. It is Charleston, South Carolina's first poet laureate. He is also an award-winning graphic designer, musician, and mentor to hundreds of students. His poetry has been presented by the Kennedy Center and has been recognized by NPR, the Chicago Tribune, PBS NewsHour, the Washington Post, and several other publications. In 2019, he won a Governor's Arts Award. His 8th book, Birth of All Things, from Freeburst Press, will be coming out. And his 34th album is Subverse, an Afrofuturist electronic short film project. Hi, Marcus. Next up is Stephen Hayes, who is a visual artist, who is the recent recipient of the 1858 Society Award from the Gibbs Museum of Art. Frequently in his work, Hayes uses three symbols, a pawn, a corn, and a horse, to explore America's use or misuse of Black bodies, Black minds, Black labor. Artists, he believes, are as much translators as they are creators. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
And finally, our third guest is Bill T. Jones, who is a Tony Award-winning, multi-talented artist, choreographer, dancer, theater director, and writer. He is also the artistic director, co-founder, and choreographer of Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane Company, and artistic director for New York Live Arts. Hi, everybody.
All right. Thank you for having us.
All right. No problem. So the conversation is really thinking about Omar and the concept of justice, especially as someone who had been incarcerated. So, and thinking about artists, right? So how can we think about the connection between art, justice, and liberation? So for me, I want to start off with this idea around justice, right? So for us, how might you define justice? What does justice look like for you, artistically speaking?
I just driving here from the theater. I heard a really beautiful, powerful interview with the counsel for George Floyd's family. He happens to be the counsel also for Breonna Taylor, and I believe one of the other tragic deaths. And he was speaking to this issue, and they were talking about accountability and justice. He said that Breonna Taylor and George Floyd have the chance of having something he would call accountability, which is at least their tragedy was brought to the public attention, and there was actually a court of law. Now, the fact is that no policemen were charged. But then he goes on to say something which was kind of devastating. He said, well, let's talk about justice. If it had been just, all those people would still be alive. And I thought that was a very tough line to take. And I'd wonder with my colleagues what you think about that. What is there such a thing when a horrible crime has been committed like that? Can it ever be? What is justice? Justice, can it ever be explained? Can it ever be mitigated? Can it ever be normalized? And I think what he was saying is it can never be normalized.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll follow up on that because I think a lot about tragedies throughout his history that have affected Black people. And I think about the ones where justice, as it is defined by the law, has happened. And it's not like we walk away from those experiences feeling good. You know what I mean? Like, because the tragedy happened in and of itself. So that's a really good point. So in my mind, justice, though it has a simple definition, you know, equality under the law, there's a lot that needs to happen for justice to really happen. And I don't know that we're anywhere close to it because of all the shared trauma that we all have, because we have a sense of deja vu whenever anything happens, because as Black people, we have these shared experiences, and it keeps happening over and over again. So even with people in power who look like us, helping to shift law into a place where it needs to be, there's almost too much stuff has happened for us to really know what justice feels like. I think we're too far removed from it, and that's a sad way to look at it, but that's just the reality when I really dig into what justice means.
Yeah, and I agree with Marcus and what Bill had to say, because it's so many layers that have built up over time that, you know, that you can't really see what justice is going to look like right now because of all the layers from the past to now, you know. So
yeah, and I think when it comes to Omar, oh, go ahead. You're gonna. Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, justice for Omar, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lag that's happening. But I'll continue if that's cool. Yeah, I was just gonna think about what it means justice for Omar, in my opinion, is sort of if we were somehow able to find out and tell all of the stories that haven't been told. I mean, we are fortunate enough to have his story, and that is a beautiful example of what it was like to be an enslaved person. And his words are amazing. But I just think about how many stories have been lost, how much history has been lost. So it would be great if 3,000 years from now we have more Omars, you know, and I feel like that would be part of the story for justice as it pertains to Omar.
You know, both of you gentlemen are artists, and you know, as an artist, we are pretty self-involved, and many of us are concerned about our legacy. And let's face it, the greater share of us are unsung. So this might sound a little flippant, but for Omar, when his history is shaken down, to even be the one, Marcus following up, in a way, is that, as in the calculus that we as artists employ, is that kind of a justice? Did he escape them? I have Jewish friends that when sometimes we're having a good meal and they'll say, well, that's another one the Nazis won't get. It's a curious elocution, but I understand what they mean, that every day that you are not killed is in a way kind of a victory. And maybe I'm sort of defining justice from that point of view, just to fight obscurity.
Wow.
Is that a kind of justice, or is that puny? What do you guys think?
I kind of think there probably is kind of like a, you know, justice or a win. I mean, because at the end of the day, his story is here, and it's creating this history for everybody else to learn from, because who else is going to be able to tell his story if not him? You know, his story is there now, you know, on paper. He can only tell his own truth, you know, like all artists, you know, we can only tell our own truth, you know, and help the next generation.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's interesting too to think about. I know we're just like flowing with this conversation, but I think about even just the fact of being aware that it is a privilege to be able to tell our story, you know, to be able to do this. Just all these things that I think that we take for granted. When I say we, I can't speak for everyone, but sometimes I take for granted the fact that I have the ability to share my story. I have the ability to have somebody, listen to my story. And whenever somebody will say, "Oh, stop trying to erase history by taking down statues or things like that," I'm thinking, there's so much history that Black folks have lost throughout time. So it's really amazing to see and hear Omar's story. I think it's wonderful. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have a question here. What then is the role of arts in social justice? Bill, you want to take that?
I am not sure. I have a very wild definition of artists. I say artists should be the freest member of any society. Artists should be literally thumbing their nose at all received wisdom. Artists are not necessarily supposed to be nice people. And I think that we're lucky if we have an artist who cares about the world, because I don't think the job description of an artist really demands that you do so. I think we want brilliance. We want genius. This life is a bit of a crapshoot. I don't know, maybe if you're a religious person, you believe that life has a purpose, but if you're not a religious person, like many artists I know are not, then it's what is the mark you made on this world? So social justice and art. I say this is my favorite formulation, and people may have heard me say that. They would ask me, what does an artist have to do? Because I'm seen as an artist, engaged artist. What do you have to do, Mr. Jones? What should you do? And I said, an artist doesn't have to do a goddamn thing. An artist must be sometimes running literally naked through the street. And as I said before, thumbing their nose. But an artist is a man, a woman, a transgender. And what does that person, that man, woman, or transgender is, what does that person need to do? Now, if you want to feed the babies like the Black Panthers did, if you want to stop violence against women, if you want to stop violence against trans people, I think an artist is allowed to live a life completely. They're allowed. Now, who's doing this allowing? God? I don't know. They're allowed to live a life completely not connected. And many great artists have been real SOBs, really cut off. So social justice, adjust your halo, that little halo that we want to have, your virtue signaling, but know it's your choice. If your job as being an artist is make really powerful art. Now, it's up to you to define what that is. It would be good if we could find a cure for AIDS and rid the world of Mitch McConnell and what's the one from the Graham, Lindsey Graham, and never mind the orange one. Wouldn't it be great if some work that I could make could rid the world of them? I'm not so vain. What are you guys thinking? I'm just going off here. What do you think about social justice and art?
Stephen, yeah.
Oh, you gonna throw it in? Okay.
Yeah. I'll go after you.
I feel like as artists, we are here to like probe questions, to ask, to make these statements, to change for change. I mean, you don't have to do it, like you said. Sometimes I just love to create just to make. And at the end of the day, if somebody likes what I've made or is inspired by what I created, then great. My job is, for the end of the day, my job is done. Like I'm happy that I changed somebody's, life with what I created. At the end of the day, I just started to make, and then the concept doesn't come right away. The concept comes with the conversation I have with my viewers.
Mm.
Those conversations that are made are priceless. Because those also help build my concepts for the most part sometimes about what the work means that I created. Because I don't want to just sit there and make something just so I could create a statement and to shock everyone. I'm making something to wow me in the beginning. Like you said, some artists have to be are selfish. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to see like, oh, did I wow myself? And then because I wow myself, I know I'm going to wow somebody else. And so at the end of the day, your artwork really doesn't have to mean something. It's just about how how it's portrayed, how your viewer. Because at the end of the day, your viewer, the people who sees your work, have different life experiences. They're going to come to it with a different meaning, in their eyes. So, if you do art for social justice, that's what you do. I mean, a lot of my artwork deals with, how I'm being seen, how I feel somebody looks at me or somebody that looks like me. I want to change the way people view the way I look, or the way somebody who in different worlds, around the world that looks like me. I'm trying to change the way I'm being seen. Help create growth throughout the world.
So, Stephen, how does that make for social justice for all people?
For all people?
Well, isn't that what we're talking? We say social justice. We're talking about.
I think
people.
I think it's more like creating like some kind of equal boundaries that transcend generations or cultural or social economic backgrounds. So I'm trying to create a work that is going to bring in each generation so they can like see how we're being viewed. Like for example, the work Voices of Futures Past. This work was created from when I was a kid, where I didn't know how to. I was bought to. I was in the private schools, but I was either the only black student or the oldest black student in the department in the school. And I was pulled aside by a black guidance counselor, and they told me I need to apologize to a Caucasian girl for something that I didn't do. I mean, I'm in the 6th grade, and she said this Caucasian girl thinks that you either touched her or sexually assaulted her, and I didn't have a class with the girl, and she kept telling me I need to apologize to this girl because I either go to jail or get in trouble. So I was like, I never did it, and she's like, well, you're the oldest black student, you need to apologize. I'm like, no, so. I go and apologize. I go to this girl at the end of school day and I'll say, hey, I'm sorry for whatever you think I did. And the girl looked at me and laughed and walked away. So that work, I was inspired to create this body of work, Voice of Future Past, so I can create a safe space for young African-American men to talk about what they're going through in today's society, how they feel the world views them. At that point in time when I was a kid, I never told my mom about that until I turned like 33 years old about that incident.
Wow.
I created a safe space for these boys to talk about what they're going through in today's society, and I archived their voices. These kids was between the age of 12 and 18. And I put their voices in the bust of older African-American men that lived in DC. So when people, this also was shown at the National Cathedral. So when people walked through and looked at these busts, they had to put their ears to this older African-American man's chest and hear the little kid's voice inside of them, talk about what they're going through in today's society. So I'm using my artwork as an engine, as a motive to like for people to see and hear these experiences, So
So I think, if I may ask, I guess the question would then just be would artists see themselves as activists, as archivists, so people who are doing archive work, or something else?
So I consider the art that I do when I choose to do poetry as a form of activism, just because I've made it a mission of mine to use that gift as an opportunity to kind of wake people up. But I'm also not naive in thinking that my art is really making like policy change or real change. I just think it's important to use the superpowers that literary artists have, whether it's like personification or figurative language, to kind of frame things in a way that people might not think. And I think that it is one thing to hear about a traumatic event on the news, or read it in a paper. It's another thing to hear about it as a poem or as a song or in a painting, you know? So we have these, I still think of it as superpowers to really help people see things differently. So in that way, I think of it as activism, because I just think it's important to realize that as an artist, we have the power to control the narrative. And that's not true of a lot of things, especially when it comes to Black folks. You know, news about us is framed through a white lens. It's in the newspaper, not owned by white folks. It's on the television station, not owned by white folks or owned by white folks. So it is an important thing for us to be able to control that narrative, and in that way, I'm very intentional, not with all of my work, but with some of my work, in being activists and to really speak about social justice. Now, I still write about cats, and I write about music, and I write about Star Wars and all types of stuff. But when it comes to that is my intention with it. And that to me is a form of activism.
I tell this anecdote about Carol Becker, a friend who used to be at the University of Chicago. She had a very important teacher who was quite provocative. And he said that art is always pushing against something. Art is always, did he say protest? I'm not sure. Somebody said, yes, professor, but what about a pure aesthete like Cézanne? What about him? And he thought for a moment. He said, well, I think it's a protest against sloppy thinking. Now, that's how highly I think about all good art. All good art, I got to stand up, pay attention, and do exactly what you're saying, Marcus, right? However, I do think there is something about the identity struggles we're having. I am of a generation that I think, at least I was burdened with it, always work is all about identity politics. Because I walk on stage with or without my Jewish Italian companion, Arnie Zane, and Bill T. Jones was talking about being in this body, being born to Estella and Gus, telling stories about the Old South, telling stories, all those things. So there was something that, and people, maybe some people responded to that very, very well. Some people were hungry to hear those stories. Other people said it's more like politics and not art. You don't hear that so much anymore, do you? Right? There was a time they could always get you with that, right? You ain't doing art, you're doing politics. Now, are we we're in an era right now where we don't make the distinction? And is that good or bad? I think if it's like you say, Stephen, and you, Marcus, that you really want to change people, and the people that you seem to want to change, that we want to change, I don't know. I'm a confused animal. I'm not quite sure. I still have a universalist notion of art, right? I still think I want to do my best for who's ever in the room. But my brothers and sisters, the people that look like me, to have their love and to have their attention is a special, sweet nectar, as we used to say back in the Krishna consciousness movement, right? The nectar, right? That's something special. However, are you a universalist? Do you think that your art has something that quickens anybody who looks in front of it, that sharpens any mind? Is that a goal of yours, or is it about your people, your people of your color, people? What about you? I struggle with this.
Stephen.
I think I'll try to open my heart up to anyone of any color, or any race. That way, it opens up these conversations to let them know, like, hey, I'm not what you see on television. I'm not how I'm being depicted on television. You know, and it comes from like me traveling around the world, you know, and seeing how people react to me versus, you know, my best friend was a white guy, you know, and seeing how they come to me and ask me for things that I don't do or don't have. And he not get the same, you know, have the same effect. So I use my artwork as a way to open for anybody. You know, I don't want to cut off any generation or anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. But I also have made things, whether it's songs or certain poems, that are just for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that overall, it is important to me that, the message is just heard. You know, the one thing that I really want is just, or the one thing that I like, and benefit from and feed off of, is just conversations that happen from it. And also, I think shared experience is really something to me. I think that trauma is shared, from us all. But I do have a lot of things that I've done that are specifically just for Black people. And it's interesting to see how that is heard, from non-Black audiences. But I do think, yeah, overall, being a universalist, is something that I naturally am. So
Yeah, I think my artwork has it. You know, it's more. You know, it's geared toward Black people, but it's open for everyone. I mean, you see like an overall Black thing because I'm a Black person. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing I can talk about is my Black experience in the world.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, when you're doing artwork, you know, it's to inspire or, you know, to incite social change.
Mm-hmm. You know, looking at that beautiful work that you installed there, it's a wonderful idea. I didn't know the work.
Yeah.
And leaning my head in and listening to the chest of those statues of Black men and hearing young boys in there. I was just listening today about the argument, if you will, with comfort women, and did they or didn't they? Were they really forced to provide sexual services for the Japanese army, or were they, quote, sex workers? You know, this rages right now. And the last people I think one of the women speaking up is 92, right? So I was thinking of a version of your work that would be inside bust of women, Asian women. And then when you lean in close, or maybe even little girls, wouldn't that be something? Little busts of little girls. And then when you lean in close, you hear a 92-year-old woman whose innocence was ripped away from her. Yeah. Right. So would it do the same thing? I know it wouldn't. It isn't the same thing, but I feel the idea is so poignant that I believe it would change whoever followed you through on that. And so, chapeau. I think that says something about the work in its specificity. It can hit a universal note.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So we're gonna, I guess, just talk next about how we would like to see art centers and nonprofits work with artists to give them agency. And I'll speak on that. I think it would be wonderful if more art centers simply paid artists just to be artists. I think a lot of times so many things are goal-based or project-based, but it's rare in my experience to receive support, monetary support, just for being an artist. You know, like a lot of us are working artists, or we have other things that we're doing, but we're asked to make time and create these things that will change people's lives, you know. But there is a lot of pressure to the way that this world works. So I just think that supporting artists through money just to create, and that could be whatever that looks like for you. That could be, you know, just time in your studio for a month, or just or whatever that looks like for you. I just think that that's important. I also just think that artists in residence programs and positions are really important, especially for younger artists as well. I really enjoy being in front of students, passing on whatever knowledge I have, whatever I've learned, so they can be better than me. I just think that it just keeps things going. But the monetary aspect of being an artist needs to be talked about more. This isn't magic, what we do. Like it is a lot of work. So we need to be compensated for that. And that's the one thing that came up for me with that question. So
I think some institutes should tap into local artists, not just the mainstream artists that are like getting all the buzz, but create this, financial, stability for these local guys who don't have, the mainstream buzz, help them get to that level, to that plateau. I love residencies. I love doing them all because they help me, like you said, Marcus, connect with everyone else, and make these connections with young people or older people.
As you know, I'm the artistic director of I guess we call it an experimental space, New York Live Arts, and I do hope to walk you both around there sometimes if you come and visit us in New York. And when we were putting together our program, what was it about? We said we want to support artists at every stage. Now we're talking body-based artists, movement-based artists, at every stage of their career. That's one thing. We went, what is that support? That's what we're talking about. The question is always, people in my field, what did they need? They need clean, open space, they need time. They need to have the pressure taken off of how their rent is being paid.
Yeah.
If they're working with other people, can you pay those people a respectable wage? This is a big order for a field like mine that it has very little market value. So an organization like mine or the organization that the question implies exists, you've got to be there. You've got to be stable. You've got to be able to keep your lights on so that you can make sure that those artists, and which artists, you're going to let everybody, you're going to let anyone who comes in. How do you select this? Since the resources are so limited, how do we select who gets that relief from their and how do that financial relief? How do you suggest? Is it a young artist or an older artist? These are all questions that I have answered as an administrator. Now, as a person who has been the recipient of it, I love the imprimatur when someone says, "Come in and do whatever you want to do." That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
No strings attached, although I don't believe it. But no strings attached. Oh, you don't want me to do a showing or something? You don't want me to come out and shake my butt for your funders or bat my eyes? You don't want me to seduce, because we're all into it. Makes us all kind of conspirators, doesn't it? Those persons who are receiving the largesse and the grants, and those persons who are providing it. Where is that funding coming from? Now, maybe that's a different question. But I'd like to see, am I saying we need more Ford foundations? We need a more beefed up National Endowment for the Arts so that nobody has to worry about fundraising. Then I'm going to be as generous as a good Rockefeller, not the one that we had. And I'm just going to throwing money at artists to come and make. Maybe that is an aspiration of some of these young folks that you're referencing. Someday that's the world they will see. But right now, we're still struggling with capitalism, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
We're still struggling with, do you have something that the culture wants, that they will pay you to do it without any strings attached? And that makes us go through a lot of weird conniptions, doesn't it? Who do I have to be that what do I have to give to you? You will open your checkbook for me and let me go at it. Now, I'm going around. The question implies that is possible. And I don't know if I expect to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's heavy, and it's true. There's so much to unpack there, but I think that there's so many other professions that we just automatically pay for. And I mention this all the time, but just, a plumber comes to your house and you have a problem. You have a toilet that needs to be fixed, and you just, they give you the bill, you pay the bill, they fix it, they go home. You don't even think about it. But, as artists, we are obviously doing things that are like have an emotional weight to it. It's not quote unquote tangible, especially with poetry. And still you have to fight for a nickel. And it's really an interesting thing. And art is going to happen whether we are paid for it or not. And I think people know that. So they're a little loose with it.
That's dangerous to say, isn't it, from a working artist? Hey, look, y'all, we're going to do this whether you pay us or not. They say,
Yeah.
We won't pay you.
Right.
No, don't we have to get tough and start making noises like, no, you got to treat me like that plumber. You got to treat me like that. I'm not going to. Can we do that? Can we? Is that justice for Omar? He gave writing on the walls in his cell and what his life cost, and he wrote that autobiography and all to inspire us. But what did he get? I don't know.
So I guess this leads us to the next question. Does it take a traumatic event to spark creativity or to inspire culture?
Yeah.
What you think?
As I told Letitia and Tamara the other day, a favorite saw of mine, and it's not original, I think it comes from an Irish poet, Keats, is that art happens when something is being pushed against. Now I believe that's true. And it can be as much as I'm pushing against the fact that my mother and father, my dad didn't love me. And I'm pushing against the fact that I'm in my gender is a problem. I'm pushing against the fact that I live in a country that's been racist from its foundation and won't acknowledge it. I'm pushing against the fact that I want to make something that is like a prayer. I'm pushing against it, and I don't know how to pray. A traumatic event, well, Black folks should be turning out huge amounts of now they turn out a lot of art. We turn out a lot of art. Is it all at the level of think of your favorite artists, the big time, the people that really even moved you? How much of that is around? So art happens when something is being pushed against. Trauma should guarantee wonderful result. Does it?
Yeah, and as an artist, and as artists, that's how we naturally respond to almost anything, is create art. Something joyful happens, we write it down, or we dance, or we do sculpture or something. But when something traumatic happens, we dance, we write it down, or we do a sculpture. Some people respond to traumatic events by drinking at the bar all night, punching holes in walls, doing all types of things. So I think it's almost a lovely curse to be an artist, because whatever happens, we're going to respond to it through our chosen art form. So yeah, trauma definitely is in there, and something about traumatic experiences really opens people up. And I can only really speak for myself, but there's something that happens there that it's a higher calling, or it's my ancestors like smacking me in the face or something. But it's really it's almost beautiful to tap into. But it's something that, as an artist, a lot of us, we can't turn it off, So it's something that is always there. Yeah.
I think traumatic graduate school, man, was one of those things that really kicked my tail. I was the only African American person in my department, and I didn't have any African American professors, so I felt like they kept pushing me to do art about being Black, or something like that. I had a ceramic background where I was just throwing pots and hand building and stuff, and it didn't really have a meaning. It was hard for me to think about, to talk, build these concepts. And then it took a while for me to understand what I wanted to create. So I ended up making this exhibition called Cash Crop. which was about the transporting of people from Africa to America, in the trial slave trade. And it came from me not knowing much about the transporting of people from Africa to America. Not in school, they didn't go over how many ships shipped these people on a 6 to 8 week journey, how they were treated on these ships. They just went into like slavery and then into Civil War and all these other histories, but they didn't go into what it was it took to make it, to ship these people here. So I ended up making 15 life-size statues. And I made them, they're all life-size so people could walk through them. I made the chains, I blacksmith all the chains as they would when they would ship them here. Ended up carving the backs of each of the statues. So that image of the Brooks slave ship hand that's on the back of each one of these statues made me think about, how does this still happen today? How are we being, how are we still buying these goods? Because back then people were considered goods and commodity. And so I ended up looking at that slave ship, that image, and it looked like a sweatshop in a third world country where these people were just getting enough goods, enough space to produce as much goods as possible and ship them here to America. So I used that, me not learning much about that, as a way of showing, kids, like comparing it to today, to kids, to people, like, make them want to think about, how does it still exist today? How is the transport of goods today happening?
So you're saying then that the trauma narrative, and that's something I'm sure the poet understands what I'm talking about, the trauma narrative actually was the thing that pushed you towards finding your voice, which I'm assuming that's what we mean. Does trauma help us find our voice, find the urgency to make?
Yeah, so it was more of like, wow, y'all are saying I'm not an artist, that I'm just, what is it? What's the word? That I'm just creating, that it was basically saying I wasn't an artist, that I was illustrating my artwork, because I couldn't build a concept and everything. And they kept pushing me toward doing stuff about Black, being Black. And I wanted to think about, how could I, instead of it just being Black, how can I make it universal for everyone to understand?
But Stephen, I thought where you were going to go with that, I think your teachers, maybe I'm giving them more credit, they were saying, you're talented, but we don't feel it. We don't think it's connected to you.
I think that, they knew that I had this talent. And, but as far as the way of pushing me toward getting to where I needed to be, there was a different approach that could have been done. Maybe they did the right approach, because at the end of the day, it's all about life experiences. I guess they helped me build a narrative, and help me build about, learning about who I am and how to, teach my word or spread my message with my artwork or my creativity. So, in the beginning, yes, I took it as a, traumatic experience. Like, what do you mean I'm not an artist? Or why are you trying to make me do stuff about things I don't even talk about right now?
Don't talk about or don't feel. You're trying to make me feel right, make art about an experience that's not mine.
Yeah.
Is that what but then something clicked.
It was like, I want to make something that's going to, wow everyone, and it was like, I have the subject of what I want to create, and I have the idea behind it. It was just about building that body. I was just about learning about how to build that body of work and learning how to create the concept. At that point in time, I didn't have the concepts. I didn't know, I just knew I knew how to make. I knew I could do it well. So they helped me develop my why, with the beginning of my why, it's grown since then, So those experiences are what helped thrive my artwork.
Help rob it, you said?
No, thrive. Help it thrive.
Part of that question, I see, because I had spoken to Tamara and Latesha the other day about the show at the new museum now, Okwe Enzor and Glenn Ligon. It's a show called Grief and Grievance. Big show with Carol Walker, Carrie Mae Weems, Frank Willis Thomas, and the name of it is Grief and Grievance. When I saw that, my companion gave it to me. He said, I think you'd be interested in this. I said, what? I need more grief and grievance in my life. And he said, no, you might find this meaningful. And as I looked at it, I began to understand that grief and grievance actually were very elusive terms, bigger terms. And I wonder, Claudia Rankine offers a wonderful essay called Black Mourning is Black. It's something I'm paraphrasing, excuse me, Claudia. Mourning, M-O-U-R-I-N-A-N-G, is the Black artistic experience. Mourning.
Wow.
I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, it's a powerful show, but I had to wrestle with that a little bit.
Yeah, speaking on that and what Stephen was talking about, how they wanted you to do work about being Black, you know, and you like initially kind of pushed back against it. I think that it's okay to not have all of the answers, especially as Black artists, because I think that we are often asked to summarize things for people, especially when it comes to racism. You know, like they're looking to us so to define this, and sometimes we are still wrestling with everything that's happening and going through all of this trauma. When the massacre at Mother Emanuel happened, I was immediately asked to write a poem about it. And I'm like, I'm still drying my tears. Like, how do I write a poem about this sort of thing? And eventually I was able to do it. And I've done that a few times. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just think when it comes to trauma, grief, I think that so much of what is asked of us as Black artists doesn't necessarily look at joy. And I would love for people to pay as much attention to our joyful pieces. And this might just be a reflection of the South, but I would love for us to pay attention to our joyful pieces just as much as our traumatic pieces or our pieces that do talk about grief, because media loves traumatic black stories. You know, like they love that stuff. I'm looking for joy. Like I'm looking for stuff that makes me laugh and all of that. I mean, obviously there's balance in life, so you can't have it all one way or the other. But I'm seeing it as an imbalance right now. Everybody wants us to summarize trauma for them.
Marcus, what about soul?
Excuse me?
What about soul? I mean, is soulfulness? What is soulfulness?
Wow.
Because it's related. Is soulfulness blues, or is soulful make me want to holler and get up and shake my butt? What's soul?
Soul is all of that. Soul is everything, I think. Yeah, soul are those parts of yourselves, that the parts of yourself that you don't even realize is there, that wants to dance and sing, and like it's the automatic reaction to something that's wonderful. It's the automatic reaction to something that is hard. It is everything. It is all of it. It's also an interesting Disney film too. I don't know if y'all have seen that yet.
My sister is one of the voices in it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
In the beauty parlor, she's one of the.
Oh,
voices.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, gentlemen, we're gonna let it go like that, because don't we teach the world how to stand up in public and talk about, I've been buked and I've been scorned and I'm still here, and I am the child of slaves and I am still here. I mean, isn't that not part of our brand? The sorrowfulness that comes with soulfulness. Let's own it. But I got at you about, I think the question had been, Tamara's question had been boy joy. We're going to talk about Black boy joy.
Yeah.
Right? Define Black boy joy. What does happiness, joy look like to you? Is it present in your art or somewhere else? Define Black boy joy. I don't know where that boy part is coming from, but anyway, what we want to try to define joy?
Steven, that's all you, bro.
Man, come on. Come on. I mean, joy. Man, I have twin boys that are, they'll be 2 in July. And seeing joy on their face, that one of them has this laughter that as soon as you hear it, it makes you want to laugh and look at it, see what he's laughing about. And that's the type of joy I love to see. Like I'm happy to be the role model for my kids that I didn't have, you know? So that's a joy for me, you know. That's my, I guess, Black dad joy, to see my boys smile and be happy that they have both of their parents here to keep them, you know, to have their back.
So life is not tragic.
No, life is not tragic.
You want to see that in the face of your children, and don't you want to see that in the face of your audience as well?
Exactly. I want to have something to make them smile, make them happy, or you know, create some kind of feeling throughout my audience or my viewers.
No, you don't need just any feeling of it. We just sort of we said we don't want the sorrow part.
We want happy. Yeah, I mean, I've had people say, "Hey, your work is sad," but I'm so happy that you created this. Happy that you are bringing this for everyone else to learn from. You know, even through the tears, I seen joy in them because of the message that I'm spreading with my artwork. It's like I said, it's transcending races, you know, and everything. So there's still joy there, no matter, you know, how sad the work might look, or the message that they might get out of it. So,
you know, I feel, I think I might be older than both of you. I'm pretty sure I am. But in the dance world, there was a big discussion at one point. What is Black dance? And it was, I think that we've moved past this, but Black dance at that time, I believe, was if your work is not dealing with the trauma narrative, and that's Thelma Golden's term, I believe, the trauma narrative, you ain't doing Black art. Now I have 2 first-rate artists saying to me, yeah, we got the trauma narrative down, but we can also work this other thing.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing? Is that we don't have to be buked and scorned, and but we can actually do it all? Or what is that? What is it for you guys?
Well, I just think it's the expectation that is our default, is to always go to the trauma narrative. I think is a potentially harmful thing for artists, because, you know, I know when I first started to write poems, I was writing all about love, and all of it was, I think it was 100% about love. And there was some who considered it not Black enough, you know. And for me, being Black is Black enough. But then imagine that. But still, it was a pressure that I put on myself. I'm like, all right, so maybe I'm not, you know, a Black poet. It's almost like the Black dance. You know, maybe I'm really not that, and I need to shift the way that I'm writing. Now, I'm thankful for that little critical voice in my head, because it strengthened my work and it broadened my worldview. But to have the default be, okay, we're going to write about trauma, I think can be a dangerous thing, especially for younger, you know, artists who might feel pressure to not be as free as we are as an artist. Like, you know, like you mentioned earlier, you know, to be an artist, we should be free to do whatever we want. Like, for me, I'm always drawn toward the weirder, the better. So anything, like, I'm major extra Prince fan, major extra Bjork fan, things like that. So just letting people know that they are free to do whatever they want and not feel pressure to write about racism all the time.
So you don't believe that? Now, we live in a time, I hear the young, is she Swedish girl? Greta Thunberg. How dare you, she says to the world, right? How dare you? The waters are rising, global warming, We're poisoning ourselves and the whole planet. How dare you be thinking about anything other than this right now?
Yeah.
Hey, you tell me. I mean, is that the feeling right now? Can we afford not to keep a shoulder to the wheel around that? I think I know the answer. I'm just messing with you, but
yeah.
But how do you deal with that? How dare you? How dare you actually make a song about anything other than the fact that the world is going to hell in a handbasket?
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I mean, just like Stephen, I'm a parent of a 15-month-old that I can hear, and it's just there are so many experiences in our life that helps us sort of step back and focus on our blessings. You know, the things that we might not feel like we are blessed for, but are like abundant in our lives. And yeah, there's so much going on that will come out in conversation or in art, and we are free to write about that and be informed and educated about that as well. That's what comes up for me with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what is there things that you all are working on currently, you know, or plan on projects you plan on doing in the future?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, very exciting right now. I just come back from working at MSU on a work that is, the director there said that because of COVID, these theaters are lying dormant. He says, I just want to put artists in the room and have them work. So come in, do anything we want to. And we've been working on a crazy thing. I don't know if it's going to be made for camera, which is something I don't do. It's called Curriculum. Curriculum takes its name from, do you know Achille Dimbimbe? I'm terrible with African pronunciations. He is a Black African philosopher who was invited to the University of Bergen. And they said, could you please tell us, what does the young Norwegian student need to know today to live in the world? And he was talking, and what I heard in that was, what would be the curriculum? So that's the work I'm doing. It's called Curriculum, and I call it Curriculum 1, because hopefully I have two of them. And then another work, it's called Afterwardsness, that opens in 2 weeks at the Armory. And this work was a kind of, sometimes I don't know how you feel about that, off the cuff kind of work. The Armory was closed down. They asked if we would make something to help them thaw their programming. So we made a work that came out of hours of the dancers working remotely in their living rooms and whatever, learning tapes of me dancing back 30 years ago. And so it's wonderful having these people who, some of them are older than my children, learning that material. And then when this offer came, we just put those phrases together in that vastness of the Armory. And if you've ever been there, but it's an amazing space. And at the same time, the second component in our pandemic, George Floyd. And New York, I don't know wherever you guys live, but everywhere people were in the street, coming out of this isolation and being out in the street, showing some solidarity. So this piece was putting those two pandemics, the two pandemics together. And I say that it was an opportunity for me to imagine that we would be after COVID. And afterwardsness is a term, a psychoanalytical term, actually Freudian, of the period of time that people need after a trauma, for instance, sexual trauma, to be able to look at it. So afterwardsness is the name of that piece. 2 pieces, Curriculum and Afterwardsness.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen?
Currently, I am working on a monument for the Cameron Museum of Art in Wilmington, North Carolina, where that's the location where the museum is a place where one of the Civil War was fought. So I'm basically creating 11 bronze statues of colored troops that marched to Wilmington. This will be unveiled in November of this year. I actually got to cast the molds of descendants of these men, also reenactors. So I'm actually putting their faces in the sculpture, so that it comes full circle, because back then they were fighting for the freedom of their bodies, and we still are currently today. So that'll be unveiled in November. I just recently won the Gibbs Award in Charleston, South Carolina. So I have a work on view, which is called They Combine Beauty, and that'll be on view for a year. And I'm also, I'm doing a ton of like sculpture shows. So I have a piece also called 5 Pounds that's in Charlotte, North Carolina on view. And that will be going to the North Carolina Museum of Art at the end of this year as well. So, and I'm also a professor at Duke University, so I teach sculpture and drawing at Duke University. But that's what I have going on.
That's all you have going on.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm mainly working on being a dad right now. That is the most important thing. I released my 8th book last year. It's called The Birth of All Things, and that's been going very well. Just recently collaborated with Will Lieberman, who is an opera singer, on an album that he just put out, and that album was just #1 on the Billboard classical music chart. So I'm learning to sit with some of the projects that I have. I have a tendency to keep going. But with that being said, I'm working on a kid's book that's called Black Music Is. And I just worked with an illustrator to talk about the layout of it, but it's going to be basically a history lesson about all the different types of music that Black people have started, which is almost everything. But we talk about the banjo, we talk about rock and roll, obviously, we talk about jazz, hip hop, all types of stuff. It's a beautiful book. And just finished recording an album with Quentin Baxter, who just won a Grammy with Ranky Tanky. So it's going to be a poetry and jazz album that's going to be coming out this year. So all of this stuff is really fun, and it's stuff that I'm really, really excited about. So
more power to us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, they want us to pack it in, gents. A question from our audience. Oh boy. Okay.
All right.
Is your Black experience different than your human experience, or is it a subset thereof?
Wow.
That sounds like a trick question.
Yeah, I'm not going to tackle that.
How could any experience not be a human experience?
Yeah.
I'm not. Does that sound like sophistry on my part? Or is our experience, the trauma, so great that it is outside human experience? I don't think so.
No, I don't. I think that I mean, obviously, Black people, whether we're aware of it or not, like, we have a shared experience, but that is a human experience. So I don't see it as different. Yeah, that's what comes up for me with that, and that's just my thought. I mean, it's not
Our
right.
experience is part of our human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
my feeling. That's
yeah.
my feeling. Yeah, like my experience as a man is part of my experience as a being, as a human, as a woman or a trans person or a gay person, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's been wonderful to talk with all of y'all. This is great, and this is one of the joys of COVID experiences, because this would have been a lot different if I had to travel and everything. So this is great.
Well, my internet. Thank you so much, and it's been. Oh, there.
Tamara, you sound like a robot. You sound like a robot.
Just want to say.
And thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Nigel Redden. That's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Spoleto.
Yeah.
And join us for the next talk. There's going to be another talk in April, and I think it's really important to explore Omar's story. It's a really, really wonderful story. All of the emotions are in it, but it's a wonderful story. So, all right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.